Page 26 continued. Para. The economic developments which created conditions for the origin of feudalism are rather difficult to determine. In this connection, it has to be considered whether land granted to the Brahmanas and temples was cultivated or uncultivated, and whether such beneficiaries or other landowners were the actual tillers of the soil or got their fields cultivated by temporary peasants. A Satavahana inscription from the western Deccan of AD 130 grants a part of the royal land to some Buddhist monks and states that if the land is not cultivated, the village is not to be settled. Is it 173? 175. This clearly shows that at least from the 2nd century AD, villages which were given away possessed cultivated lands. In the Ikshaku inscription of the Krishna Guntur area in Andhra Pradesh of the second half of the 3rd century AD, the ruler is referred to as the giver of hundreds and thousands of hala, H-A-L-A bracket, as much land as can be cultivated by one plough, bracket closed, measures 176. The use of hala as a measure of land by the Ikshaku rulers definitely shows that plough cultivation was well known to the people of Andhra from the beginning of the 3rd century AD. Although we are not in a position to ascertain the nature of the villages granted to the Brahmanas as gifts for sacrifices in the western Deccan during the 1st century BC 177, it is evident that such villages granted in the 2nd and 3rd centuries of the Christian era were cultivated. Para. The use of the terms Khila, Khila, and Aprahata, Aprahata, in the Gupta and land grants of north and eastern Bengal has been interpreted as meaning that vast and uncultivated lands were given to the Brahmanas, but this interpretation does not suit all cases. For instance, in the Baigram copperplate inscription of AD 448, the term Khila-Kshetra 178 cannot be taken in the sense of uncultivated and wasteland. First, in the contemporary law book of Narada, the term Khila is defined as a tract of land which has not been under cultivation for 3 years. 179. Secondly, in the above-mentioned grant, the Khila Kshetra is accompanied by some homestead land for a class of persons serving the temples 180, which suggests that it was not entirely waste land. Similarly, in the Damodarpur copperplate inscription of AD 543, the phrases Aprahata and Khila 181 seem to have been used in a conventional sense. For in this case, land is so scarce that 5 Kulya Vapas, Kulyavapas, of land, page 27, have to be purchased at 3 places, 182. Besides, here also untilled Aprahata and fallow Khila land is accompanied by homestead land, Vastu, 183, which makes it doubtful whether the land was waste. And finally, the land in question is not always described as Aprahata, for at one place the whole area of 5 Kulyavapas is defined as Khila, 184. We learn from another Damodarpur land grant of the last quarter of the 5th century AD that 4 Kulyavapas of land meant for gift to a god called Koka Mukha Swamin and 7 Kulyavapas to Sveta Vara Swamin, both purchased by a merchant, were cultivated areas beyond any doubt. 183. Para. The grants of land to temples and brahmanas in the eastern part of modern Madhya Pradesh, in the dominions of the Parivrajaka feudatories of the Guptas, differed from those made in Bengal in two important respects. The Bengal grants, which were the results of sale transactions effected by individuals, transferred plots of land, while the Central India grants, which were made by feudatories, gave away villages. The Bengal grants, which were made with the sanction of the officers of the central government, carried immunity from taxes only, but the Central India grants provided administrative immunities as well. Nevertheless, as in the case of the Bengal grants, in Central India also, terms denoting uncultivated land were used in a conventional sense. Although several grants in Central India were made, quote, according to the maxim of the fallow land, unquote, Bhumi Chidaranyaya, there is hardly any other indication to show that the villages were not cultivated and settled. In most cases, the term Bhumi Chidaranyaya served as a legal fiction. Thus, two villages which were granted according to this maxim to the Brahmanas for carrying on the worship of the goddess Pishtapurika Devi and repairing a temple were clearly settled, 186. They were inhabited by Brahmanas and others to whom the order regarding the grant was conveyed, 187. Further, these villages had been bestowed earlier as a mark of favor upon Pulinda Bhatta, evidently a Brahmin, who in his turn granted these to another priest, Kumaraswamin, 188, for which act he obtained the sanction of the Maharaja Sarvanatha. Incidentally, this also shows the process of sub-infeudation. I go back to footnotes from 175 to 189, pages 26 and 27. 175, ta cha kheta na kasate sa an gamo na vasanti. SEL INSCR page 194, 11, 324. 176 EBID pages 219 to 20, 11, 4 to 5, semicolon, page 2221.4, semicolon, page 227.1.1, semicolon, page 229, 11.324, page semicolon, page 230, 1.6. 177 EBID, page 187, 11.10 to 11. Footnote page 62. 178 EBID, page 343, 11.6 to 7. 179 Roman 11.26. 180 SCL and SCR, page 343, 1.9 and FN9. 181 EBID, page 338.11.6 to 7. 182 EBID, page 338. 183 EBID, 11.15 to 18. 184 EBID, 11.17 to 18. 185 EBID dot page 328, 11.5 to 7. 186 CII dot Roman 3I dot, 31, 11.7 to 11, 13. 187 EBID dot 1.7. 189 188 EBIT, 11.10 to 12. 189 CII Roman 4, number 7, 1.9, semicolon. 11, 1.10, semicolon. 14, 1.20, semicolon. 15, 1.21, semicolon. 16, 1.34, semicolon. 17, 1.34, semicolon. 19, 1.15, semicolon. 20, 1.13, semicolon. 21, 1.29, stop. Back to text, page 28, para. Similarly, in the inscriptions dated in the Kalachuri Chedi era found in Gujarat and Maharashtra and dating from the 5th to the 7th century AD, the term Bhumi Chidra is apparently used in the grounds of those villages and plots of lands which were settled and cultivated. 189. Of all these 9 cases, only 3 refer to grants of plots of land, the remainder 6 dealing with grants of villages. It is significant that in the earliest inscriptions, bracket, early decades of the 5th century AD, belonging to this group, the order of the Maharaja Subandhu regarding the grant of a village is conveyed to its inhabitants, 190. Although the village is granted according to the Bhumi Chidaranyaya, if settled villages were granted according to this maxim, even in the early part of the 5th century AD, the mention of Bhumi Chidaranyaya in the grants of the 6th and 7th centuries may have been a mere formality. Thus, in a Bhumi Chidaranyaya grant of AD 642 from Gujarat land seems to have been granted with a farmhouse, Shashi Baram 191, which shows that it was cultivated land. In another case, the settled character of the granted land is very evident, for the quote fallow unquote land was granted along with irrigation facilities. 192. Para. The usual phraseology in almost all such grants is that villages and plots of land were granted together with Udrangha, Udrangha and Uparikara, inclusive of all dues and exempt from all gifts, forced labor, and special rights, and not to be entered by charters and bhatas, which again suggests that these were settled areas. In several cases, the donis were also entitled to the receipt of fines realized from those who were convicted of 10 offences. The long list of taxes and imposts from which the donis are granted exemption hardly allows us to presume that these villages were virgin land. In this context, the term Avani Randhra Nyaya, the equivalent of Bhumi Chidra Nyaya, also appears as a legal fiction. Thus, in Maharashtra, a village was granted according to the maxim of Avani Randhra in AD 572, but it was declared free from the obligation of gifts, forced labor, cess for providing meals to royal officers on tour, and all taxes, and was invested with the powers of adjusting local disputes 199, which makes it likely that it was a settled village. Para. Therefore, we must be very careful in interpreting such terms as Khila, Aprahata, Bhumi Chidra, and Avani Randhra used in the land grants, page 29, of the 5th to the 7th century AD. Just as the grandiloquent titles of the kings in the inscriptions are not necessarily a measure of their exploits, so also such descriptions of land do not always indicate its real character. More often than not, these are rather in keeping with the form than with the substance. Para. In some cases, the order regarding the grant of a village to the Brahmanas is conveyed to the Brahmana and other inhabitants of that village, 194, which shows that the Brahmanas are not introduced into the village for the first time. Most land grants, especially those dated in the first 4 centuries of the Kalachuri Chedi era, do not furnish any information about the original residence of the Brahmana donis, although their gotra is frequently described as Bharadwaja. But where their place of residence is mentioned, it does not seem to be far away from the site of the land granted to them. Thus, we have many instances of granting cultivated land which may be compared to feudal practices in medieval Europe, with the difference that in Gupta and post-Gupta India, the recipients mostly belonged to the priestly order and were small in number. Para. It has been suggested that the practice of granting land in Bengal extended the area under cultivation and rural settlement 195, a point which has been stressed by Kosambi in relation to other parts of India 196. During Gupta and post-Gupta times, this seems to have been true of some areas in northern and eastern Bengal, but generally in Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and Maharashtra, settled villages and cultivated plots of land were the objects of gifts. Grants to pioneering Brahmanas probably began in the pre-Maurya period, when sometimes parts of the royal domain were granted to the Brahmanas in Magadha and Kosala 197, and they continued in the Maurya period when areas of land free from taxes and punishments was set apart for certain sections of Brahmanas 198. In the later case, it is clear that the grant was meant to extend the area of land under cultivation for the relevant provision in the Arthashastra is a part of the plan of founding new settlements 199. The process continued in subsequent times. I go back to footnotes, page 28 to 29, 189 to 199. Footnote 189. 189 CII Roman 4, number, 7, 1.9, semicolon. 11,1.10 semicolon, 14,1.20 semicolon, 15,1.21 semicolon, 16,1.34 semicolon, 17,1.34 semicolon, 19,1.15 semicolon, 20,1.13 semicolon, 21,1.29. 190 Grama Pratibhasina CII Roman 4 7 Roman 2 324. 190 Ibid 20, Roman 2, 12 to 13 and page 80 FN 10. 192 These were provided by means of Vapi, Kupa and Taraka. CII Roman 4 21.1, 28 stop. 195, 193 Ibid, 120, 11.18 to 20. 194 CII Roman III 31, 1.7. 195 PC Chakravarti, History of Bengal 1, 648 to 9. 196, An Introduction to the Study of Indian History, pages 291 to 6. 197, DN Roman I 87, Roman III, 114, 127, 131 and 2 to 4. 198 AS, 11.1. 199 Ibid. Back to text, page 29. Land grants played an important part in the colonization of new areas in Gupta and post-Gupta periods, page 30. For pre-Maurya and especially Maurya times, we have some literary evidence, and the Arthashastra of Kautilya recommends large-scale reclamation of virgin land partly through land grants. But the epigraphs seem to suggest the process from the beginning of the Christian era. From the Gupta period onwards, deliberate attempts were made to extend the arable land by means of grants. It was realized that barren tracts could be of no use to the owners unless these were made cultivable, and so grants were made to priests and temples with the object of bringing such lands under cultivation. According to an inscription of Samachara Deva from Bengal, assignable to the second half of the 6th century AD 200, when a Brahmana approached the elders of a district for a piece of land, they decided to grant it on the ground that it was full of pits and infested with beasts, and hence was of no spiritual or material benefit to the king. They thought that if it was rendered capable of being enjoyed by the beneficiary, it could bear both religious and economic fruits to the king. 201. Such intentions were not set forth in other charters, but the results of making over virgin lands to the grantee can be easily visualized. Para. The Tipera copperplate grant of Lord Lokanatha AD 650 provides an important indication of a policy of reclaiming forest areas for cultivation in eastern India. Lokanatha made an endowment of land in the forest region to more than 100 Brahmanas who were given joint and individual shares, 202. The boundaries of the land so granted were not defined, apparently because they had not been settled. Only the limits of the district Suvariga, Suvvariga, in which the forest region was situated were demarcated. 203. The forest area containing the endowed land is described as, quote, having no distinction of natural and artificial, having a thick network of bush and creepers, where deer, buffaloes, bears, tigers, serpents, etc., enjoy, according to their will, all pleasures of home life, unquote, stop. 204. Obviously, the Brahmana community was brought there for the worship of the god Bhagavan Ananta Narayana, installed in the Matha made by a high-ranking feudatory Brahmana, the Mahasamanta Pradaso Sharman, 205, at whose intercession the grant seems to have been made. Page 31. But the real significance of their advent lay in opening the forest area to cultivation and settlement. A similar process can be observed in some parts of western India. The spurious Kaira, Kaira plates of Vijayaraja, forged sometime after the middle of the 6th century AD, record shares granted to 63 Brahmanas in a village. 205. 205 or 206. This naturally facilitated mass settlement of Brahmanas. Records of this type are not many, but these two broadly indicate the colonization of barren and jungle areas through land grants to temples and Brahmanas. Para. The mode of agriculture in the settled areas, where many villages were given as agraharas or benefices to Brahmanas, certainly marked an advance on what obtained in the forest region. Methods of cultivation may have differed from one settled area to the other, but the basic knowledge may have been common to all. While describing the Shrikanta Janapada in which Thaneshwar was situated, Bana refers to the ploughing of the fields, the mounds of paddy on the threshing floor looking like artificial mountains, and the irrigation of the land through Ghati. 207. The main produce being Munga, M-U-N-G-A, within bracket Mudga, M-U-D-G-A, and wheat. 208. Obviously, such methods of cultivation were known to the holders of agraharas, who did not confine themselves only to religious and educational activities. In the course of his march, Harsha was welcomed by them with curd, C-U-R-D, molasses and sugar in closed cases. 209, which could not be produced in a forest village in the Vindhya area, where people practiced a primitive form of agriculture. According to the Harsha Charita, the area which possessed black soil did not know the use of plough and oxen. 210. Para. Anxious to eke out a living for their families, the weak farmers worked hard with their spade and formed tiny plots of land. 211. Arable fields were small in size and few in number. 212. They did not use any manure. Probably they practiced the modern jhum type of cultivation in which the aborigines burn the forest and sow the reclaimed area when rain sets in, the burnt plants and trees acting as a kind of manure. Having harvested the crop, they move on to another area and adopt the same method of agriculture there. Reference to the cutting of forests of the Vindhya region in the Harshacharita might refer to this practice. Perhaps the same mode of cultivation may also have obtained, page 32, in the forest region of Tippera, Tippera, a part of which was settled with more than 100 Brahmanas. The settlers must have introduced there the new mode of cultivation superseding the one followed by the primitive people. Whether land grants helped to introduce better cultivation in the Vindhya region in the time of Harsha is not known, but if some agraharas were donated for the support of religious establishments in forest areas, they may have been instrumental in diffusing the improved methods of cultivation. Footnotes, page 30 to 31, 200 to 212. Footnote 200 EI Roman XV III 75. 291 Ibid 11, II 1 to 14. If Savata 1.13 read as such by N.K. Bhattashali is emended into Shavata, it would mean that the land, Bhumi, was full of trees which would suit the context better. 202 EI Roman 15, 19, 11, 32 to 50. 203 Ibid Roman 2, 27 to 33. 204 Ibid pages 310 to 12. 205 Ibid 2, 16 to 32. 206 C11 Roman 4, 34. 207 page 94. Is it the same as Arahatta mentioned in the Chahmana inscription? 208 Ibid 209 page 212. 2010, 210 Ibid, page 2 to 7, 211 Ibid, 212 Ibid, 213 Harshacharita, page 203.